You mean to tell me he's still doubling down? Man, what the? So, as you guys know, yesterday, Trump got smacked down in a 6-3 ruling that his tariffs are terrible and he cannot use a 1977 Emergency Act law. So, this is something that I did not see on my bingo card for 2026. The Supreme Court actually having a backbone and telling Donald Trump, no, you cannot just do whatever you want. Man, my mind is blown. So, again, the courts ruled that his decision to make economic policies on a 1977 Emergency Law Act is basically illegal. So, in translation, emergency powers are not a Costco membership, bro. You don't get unlimited bulk tariffs. That's crazy. So let's get into it. This is how it started. Yesterday at the White House, they're having a breakfast meeting. Governors from both sides. They got coffee pouring. They got eggs scrambling. It's a bipartisanship, allegedly. And then guess what? He gets handed a note. And in that note, it says that the Supreme Court has just struck down your tariff authority, buddy. Well, you all know Trump. That's not the kind of note he wants over his scrambled eggs, you know? So then shortly after receiving that, he is angry. So he asked for all the press to leave. And you know that's code for Houston, we have a problem. So after he asked them people to leave, you know he goes into a meltdown. He starts cussing. These effing Supreme Court justices, you know, he goes off. And then, you know, he proceeds to bash his 2 Supreme Court justices that he appointed. So, of course, he's having a meltdown because Diaper Don built his economic policies around this. You could call it a loophole because that's what it is. So he made it a strategy. He made it a negotiating tactic, and it was his leverage and part of his economic personality trait. Now, who got these tariffs? Our allies, Europe, Mexico, Canada, and then everybody, China. Everybody got tariffs. And if you were a globe nearby, you were nervous. His idea is he was going to use these tariffs as a pressure tactic. You know, he was going to force countries into unfair trade deals with the promise that it would bring manufacturing back to the States, which, of course, that's not happened. Now, his MAGA supporters called it tough. The critics called it expensive, and the economists called it chaotic. But regardless of anybody's views, these tariffs were disastrous. And the Supreme Court just said, hell to the no, no, no. You can't build your entire strategy on this particular legal shortcut. Now, what is this law? Well, right now, it's got to be the most famous law heard around the world. So it was created in 1977, and it's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, also known as IEEPA. And it allows the president to regulate commerce, freeze assets, and impose sanctions in response to an unusual and extraordinary foreign threat. Now, historically, this has been used for things like sanctioning hostile regimes, terrorist networks, and foreign bad actors. It was not originally intended to become a long-term global tariff machine during peacetime. And that's the distinction where the SCOTUS drew the line. And then, you know, the Constitution had to step in, you know, and it had to enter the chat. Now, here's the part where the founding fathers quietly had to clear their throats. The Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations, not the president, but the Congress. Now, over the decades, Congress has delegated certain trade powers to presidents because trade negotiations move fast and Congress, it does not. But delegation has its limits. And the majority opinion basically said if you want to make sweeping changes to global trade policies, well, Congress clearly has to authorize that. You can't just stretch the emergency statute like it's constitutional Pilates. Emergency powers are for just that, emergencies, not for redesigning the global supply chain. So basically, Trump thought he was going to build economic power using tariffs with a loophole. It's a loophole. And do we typically consider loopholes? Cheating. It's cheating. Just, in basic layman terms. And so you got this president who is building policies to cheat. And who has been affected by these tariffs? It's been us. Every time you look at the cost when you buy something, it might be $30. And then when you go to pay out, that thing has jumped up to like $50. And that's because of the tariff taxes that we are paying. And these cost us already over $1,000. Over $1,000. Because every time we order something, we're paying the taxes. We're paying the tariff tax on it. Now, what really got him pissed is the fact that 2 of his appointed justices vouched and they voted. And that's Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Once he found out, of course, he behaved like a child and personally attacked them and said, they should be ashamed. When in actuality, Trump, you should be ashamed because you are making everybody suffer. What happened to affordability? Nothing is affordable. Nothing. Right? Now, you made this your signature move. And now you need Congress to approve of these sweeping moves. That changes everything for you. Because Congress is going to require votes. It's going to require you having to take orders from them. And you feel like nobody can tell you what to do. Nobody can tell the king what to do. And this comes along with the fact that you got a negative GDP score. Like everything is below what you guys expected it to be. The total output of goods and services increased at 1.4 annual rate in the fourth quarter, which is down from a 4.4% in the last quarter and 3.8% from the previous quarter. So these tariffs have done nothing but tear apart the country. And then also that money that you have collected, said to be about 150 billion, it's illegal money. And so now these companies, they all want their money back. We want our money back because it's illegal. When do we get it back? Who do we sue? Do we sue Trump? Do we sue the government? Like, what do we do? So as for now, the foreign governments are watching closely to see what happens. For years, tariff threats could appear quickly and shift negotiations overnight. But now, large-scale tariffs will likely require congressional involvement. That means slower, more predictable, and more bureaucratic. And the markets tend to like the predictability. Now, zooming out, The decision fits into a broader pattern from the Supreme Court. In recent years, the court has shown skepticism toward sweeping executive interpretations of old laws, especially when those interpretations have major economic consequences. There's a legal principle often referred to as the major questions doctrine, which basically says if Congress wants to give the executive branch enormous authority over major economic issues, it needs to state that clearly, not vaguely, not implied, and not we'll figure it out later, but clearly. And tariffs affecting billions, potentially trillions in trade, well, that qualifies as major. So now Trump is going to try and go around and look for other loopholes in the Constitution. He doesn't plan on doing anything the proper way. His little minion, Steve Miller, got on TV and said, they were gonna find other ways to keep the tariffs. So that means that they, despite the Supreme Court ruling, Trump, the king, feels like nobody can tell him what he can do. To me, that means impeachment. What are we waiting for? Impeach him since he doesn't want to do what he's supposed to do. Because why are you still hell-bent on tariffs and punishing us? Aren't you for America? America first? But we're getting the bad treatment. Our pockets are being hit bad. No. So really, this isn't just about tariffs, it's about boundaries. It's about who holds the power to make massive economic decisions. The Supreme Court just reinforced that emergency authority has its limits and that Congress, not the president, ultimately controls the power to levy sweeping tariffs. That's structural. That's not a small technical ruling. This shapes how trade policy works going forward, no matter who's in office. So the SCOTUS finally stepped up and shut down Trump's tariff tactics in the ruling that a president cannot use a 1977 emergency law to impose sweeping tariffs during peacetime. The court, they put guardrails up. Not chaos, not collapse, but limits. And in American government, limits matter because if emergency powers can quietly become permanent policy tools, well, that's scary because that means that any president going forward will try to do the same thing. And we don't need that. That's not emergency governance. That's executive expansion. And the court just said, not today, Trump. Well, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. If you like the content, please like, share, subscribe, and drop down in them comments and let me know what you think. Peace. Talk to you guys later.